Welcome to the Do Good X podcast, a sanctuary from the entrepreneur grind. Hosts Kimberly Danielle and Stephen Lewis, advocates for impactful entrepreneurship, guide you on the path where purpose meets business. Join us to slow down, reconnect, and explore the challenges of under-resourced entrepreneurs, uncovering the unique journey of building businesses that make a difference. Now, your hosts, Kimberly Danielle and Stephen Lewis.
Hello, and I want to welcome you to our Do Good X podcast. My name is Stephen Lewis, and I am a catalyst for positive change in communities and business. And for the past 2 decades, I have inspired leaders and entrepreneurs to live and work on purpose with intention, faith, and a commitment to their well-being. And I want to thank you as the listener for tuning in. And now I want to turn it over to my co-host, Kimberly Danielle, to introduce herself.
Welcome, everyone. I am Kimberly Danielle. I'm so glad that you have joined us again today. I am a community builder, a communication strategist, and a coach that comes from generations of faith-driven entrepreneurs who believe that our purpose should drive us contributing to the common good. Now, you are in for a treat today. We are so excited to have our guests here with us and for taking the time because, look, as entrepreneurs, we know that time is so valuable. So today we have the privilege of chatting with William McNeely, who is an entrepreneur in the game and nonprofit executive with a storied career, including a pivotal role as a market development executive at Apple. William is the founder of Do Greater in Charlotte, North Carolina, and has fostered really a strong community dedicated to nurturing the next generation of creative leaders. And this is by cutting edge technology, inspiring creative spaces, and building a robust community network. And at the heart of his initiatives is the Creative Lab platform. And this equips youth and young adults with critical skills in design thinking, digital creativity, and entrepreneurship. Okay, so there's more. William has also served on the boards of various nonprofits and has been involved in faith-based organizations promoting hope and positivity. He has launched multiple businesses and possesses a deep resilience, which is evidenced by his personal story and recovery from a double lung transplant. I remember hearing William's story early last year when we met, and I was so inspired by his personal journey. And I left the phone call. I shared his story with so many people, and it was just so inspiring and invited them to check out Do Greater. His personal journey is inspiring, and his mission and dedication to inspiring impactful change. That is it really can motivate you. It can really drive you and compel you to do what it is that you're called to do, because that is what he is doing. His work and story reflects his clear commitment to education, to technology, and to community empowerment. So welcome, William. We are so grateful that you have joined us here today.
Good morning. I'm definitely glad to be here. That was a great introduction. That was wonderful. I just need to leave now. So.
Well, it's you. I'm gonna go ahead and just get in the grid, get in the meat of our conversation today. I mentioned your resilience in my intro for you and about your double lung transplant. And while I know your story, and there's articles out there that also tell your story, which is so powerful, can you share with listeners how your diagnosis and experience really shaped and informed your idea and the launch of Do Greater?
Yeah, it was an interesting time for me as a corporate executive in Charlotte, really focused around just a lifestyle like everybody else had. Working and taking care of a family. I have two kids at the time when my diagnosis happened back in 2015. They were in, my daughter had just graduated from college and my son was in college or headed into college. And back in 2015, I was diagnosed with idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. And this is a terminal disease that had been somewhat dormant in my body for a number of years. And just reared its ugly head around 2015 as I was, growing a family, going a corporate life, side gigs and coaching football, just a great life. And I think, one of the things that really, for me, it woke me up as it relates to the types of things that I wanted to do in my life, and really started to understand kind of what my why was all about. I would definitely say, don't let a situation like that determine or make you stop to think about that. But what it did for me was allow me to kind of, okay, take a deep breath and say, what is it that I am supposed to be doing? Here I am facing a terminal disease. And for me, it was not necessarily considered a terminal disease. It allowed me to kind of reflect and say, okay, with the time I have left, what am I supposed to be doing? And during the entire time, I never thought that it was as bad as it was. I mean, terminal was not a word that I used a lot at that time. It was, I am in a situation where I have a time to reflect about what the rest of my life is going to be about. And at that time, I really started to study. As you know, I'm a faith-based person, Christian, that really relies on my faith. And at that time, in times of difficulty and obstacles, you really have to dig down and understand, what that means. And so I started to think about this idea of doing greater. What is it that I need to do? What is it that my life has done that will leave a lasting impact? And literally, it popped into my head, and I wrote this sentence down, and it says, commit to doing greater. Commit to doing greater things that will make an impact when you are no longer available or you are no longer here. And when I wrote that, I'm thinking, okay, what does that mean? What does it mean to do greater? And it really was based on a Bible verse that just John 14:12, that talks about doing greater things. And that popped up inside of me. And I said, okay, what is it now with the time I have left that I am supposed to do? This was 2015. I literally was on oxygen 24/7 for the next 3 years. So my life changed from, being pretty vibrant around the community and making an impact to, carrying 3 oxygen tanks behind me 24/7. And it happened overnight. So the change in my perspective and my mind had to change overnight. So I could have at that point said, okay, my life is over. I'm done. Let me lay on the couch and just wither away. But my perspective was, okay, with the time I have, what is it I am supposed to do? And what does that do greater look like for me? And so that's kind of how I approached it at that point. And 3 years later, 2019 was when, idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis just took over. And on literally looked on my chart at the hospital, and it said EOL. And if you're in technology, EOL means end of life. And my chart said end of life. I went into the doctor and in rehab, and right before my lung transplant, he said, William, you have 2 weeks to go. And I said, what do you mean by that? He said, well, you've got 2 weeks that you would either not be here in the next 2 weeks, or you will be so weak that we can't transplant you. This was on a Thursday when he told me that. And I think one of the biggest lessons that I learned at that point was this whole perspective shift of how you look at things, which is helping me in my nonprofit now. So my shift at that point was not that I had 2 weeks left. My shift was I have 2 weeks to figure out, or the doctor had 2 weeks to figure out, or God had 2 weeks to miraculously change the situation where, I'm moving on. And so my mindset was not that it was over. It was that, 2 weeks from now, I'll be doing something that will continue to make an impact in other people's lives. So I gave myself 2 weeks. The doctor gave me 2 weeks, but God said, on Saturday, I was transplanted. So 2 days after that, when people have been on transplant waiting lists for 6 to 8 months, took 2 days for the lungs to be available. I was transplanted on a Saturday. Sunday morning, I woke up breathing. And at that point, I remember vividly, I actually had an iPad on my lap as they were pushing me back into surgery that had the vision for Do Greater on it. And I told the doctor, I said, take this iPad and give it back to me in the morning when I wake up, because I need to be doing this. And sure, the next morning I woke up, I got the iPad back and started planning and developing the next steps of Do Greater Charlotte.
Wow.
Well, we're glad that you're here, and we're glad that you are the miracle that you are to so many in the greater Charlotte area.
Thank you.
So in 2019, you started all this in a mobile truck for underserved youth, and then you found a permanent home for
Mhm.
Do Greater in the basement of Shiloh Institutional Baptist Church. Tell us a little bit about what led to that expansion from a mobile truck to actually bricks and mortar, and what are some of the challenges or opportunities that this provided for you and your business?
Yeah, I mean, it's 2019 March, coming out of the double lung transplant. One of the things that was important for us was to understand how to activate the ideas around Do Greater. So Do Greater is this idea and this philosophy of making an impact in the community, but we didn't have a way to actualize that. We didn't know what that looked like. And so we really started to do research around the community around what were some of the major needs in particularly the west side of Charlotte, an under-resourced, under invested area over the years, a product of gentrification, a product of urban renewal. And so I grew up in this area as well. So I'm back home thinking about what that impact could be from my perspective. We started to look at, poverty rates and dropout rates in this particular zip code in Charlotte, and which was the same zip code that I grew up in. So I started to think, what was it for me and my family and my brothers and sisters that allowed us to be successful coming out of this same neighborhood? And really what it started to boil down to was this access and exposure that we received as a product of busing. So we were bused to other neighborhoods in Charlotte and started to kind of visualize and see the types of things that we can do and become. And so when we started to create an organization, we said, well, what does it look like for us to do that as well? And my background at Apple, my background in educational technologies just leaned itself to developing this platform to do that. So we reached out and started to think about what would it look like for us to have this mobile truck, this lab that went out into the community and started to provide this access to technology, particularly in communities that didn't have access to it. To us, it was a rolling Apple store. It was, taking this whole concept of creative technologies that you could experience in an Apple store, taking it inside communities and inside cul-de-sacs that we can pull up, toot the horn, wireless broadband, iPads, all of these things in this truck, and kids could come out in their own neighborhoods and experience this technology along with these connections that we were bringing with mentors that were coming along as teachers. And so that was the first kind of iteration of the idea. And this was 2019, pre-COVID. So, as we started to go into COVID, at that point now, you're not putting 15 kids in the back of a truck. So schools closed. Our target went inside their own homes. And we decided at that point, just through lessons that we had learned through the truck was, there were three things that were really needed in order for us to build out this nonprofit. And it's just listening and hearing the types of things that our kids were telling us. And so we knew through COVID that there was a lack of tools and technology. So when you send kids home and you tell them to learn in their own environments, this technology that they have is just not conducive for that. And so we knew that we would have to have some advanced tools and technology that we could offer. Secondly, when you send kids home, there is no creative space for them to activate. So in situations, in COVID, my son was in college at the time, and he came home and said, I'm going to learn at home. I got to spend a semester here. So we outfitted, our bonus room with technology and Wi-Fi and all the types of things that could, benefit him. But the kids that we serve don't have that in their own homes. They don't have this place or this third place that they can come and be creative. And then the last thing was, this whole nurturing community. How can we build up a community around these kids? Some of in my case, it was parental. I was that nurturing community for my son. But some of our kids that we work with don't have that and are not exposed to creative professionals in the industry as well. So we knew we needed to have a physical space that had those three things. And so when we started to look for that, we started to take advantage of opportunities, based out of the situation. So I always say innovate through the chaos. And so when there are situations that are out there and that the greatest innovations come out of these downturns or these chaotic times. And so for us, it was, where is it that we can leverage now in this time that will benefit our organization? And it was, at that time, churches were struggling. Churches were struggling coming out of COVID. People were not going back into churches. They were losing membership, as well as a lot of the members were now viewing the services online. So that meant there was a lot of underutilized space. And we reached out to Shiloh Institutional Church here in Charlotte, and there was some underutilized space that they had, as well as an old daycare that they were not using at all. And we partnered with them to convert the entire 8,000 square feet of first floor of the church into an innovation lab for our kids. So that's literally how that came about. It was knocking on doors, understanding that there was a market and a need for our services, and there was some underutilized space that we could take advantage of.
So one, I love the fact that not only your story through your health journey, but also you growing up in this community and kind of your firsthand experience and tuning into the community needs really fine-tune the direction that you went toward with Do Greater, because a lot of organizations or companies are really kind of helicoptering in to communities and determining what the needs are, but you were really connected and in tune. So one thing to know, I believe I read that you were a member of Shiloh growing up, this church. And so there was kind of like a full circle and connection. And so I wonder if there's anything you want to say about that. And then I also know that you, as of this year, or maybe it was last year, you're kind of looking toward expanding to Uptown and raising money for a new space. And so I'm wondering kind of what has led to that further expansion as well.
Yeah, I mean, we are growing rapidly, and that's not necessarily, due to, anything special from our perspective. I think it's just an unmet need that we are providing some services around. And so, yes, you mentioned that I was a member growing up of Shiloh. I was, and my mom is still here. And I think that's a critical point, because I think there was a level of trust in what we were trying to do. When you go into an environment and you ask a church literally to take over half their facility, there has to be a level of trust that allows them to say, okay, we understand who you are, what you're trying to do. But at the same time, you have to articulate what the benefits are for the organization as well. So we said, hey, we are reinvigorating this building that now will become the center of the community again. We're bringing in families into this church, into this space now. And because the community is changing and gentrifying and new members are moving in, we now are activating a space that is now seen as the community center of this neighborhood. So that was beneficial for everybody. And it also allowed the church to do some things that they would not normally be able to do. I mean, there are 60 parishioners in this church. And it's over 30,000 square feet of space. And so there were some things that needed to be done that they couldn't do, that we could. And so we paved a parking lot that hadn't been paved in 20 years that they were trying to do. So we did that. We took the entire first floor, and now it has a full service coffee shop inside the space as well, which is bringing in the community to have coffee, and in turn asking, what is this church about? Or, what are you guys doing here to meet the needs of the community as well? So those things have, allowed, some mutually beneficial results of what we've been doing. Our motto as a nonprofit was built out early, and that is, how do we take the spaces, the community, and the tools that we're bringing to a community and scale that across the city? So we know in Charlotte there are what Charlotte calls 6 corridors of opportunity. And these are areas that are underinvested areas, high poverty areas over the years. And we know there's literally 6 of them. And so for us, from day one, we said, we're going to take this idea and be hyper local in all these communities. And so we're gonna plant a flag on the west side here in the Shiloh location and build this up now. And so last year we had over 400 kids come to our program in our space in the first year, which showed us there was a huge need for this. But at the same time, we also started to see, because we built the space as an innovation lab, and we hired architects here in Charlotte. We built it as though it would look like it was in a corporate facility. Now we have served over 3,500 creative adults in our space last year. So these are individuals coming in our space, renting our space, having coffee, having meetings, having board meetings, because our space is, it's cool, actually. And what that does for us is allows us to have this earned revenue model. So all of that activity is generating revenue. Coffee shop generates revenue. Memberships generate revenue that we pour all back into our programming for our kids. And so when we start to look at that, we build this ecosystem of support now from outside members of the community who are coming in, spending dollars inside our space, and now supporting our programs, because all of our programs are free for our kids. And so our entrepreneurship programs, our DJing programs, our digital video programs, all these programs are free to our students, but are funded by the community because of the earned revenue model. And so because of that, we've always said that we need to activate in other parts of the city as well. And so, as you mentioned, we are now looking to scale the model in even Uptown Charlotte. And as most people know, Charlotte is the second largest financial hub in the country. Multiple Fortune 500 financial institutions are headquartered here in Charlotte. Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Truist, all these folks are, right in our city here. And so we believe that a hub location uptown allows us to integrate and partner and increase our partnership engagement with our sponsors to allow them now to activate in another space. And then that space acts as a hub location. And then all of our spoke locations out inside these under-resourced communities now can take advantage of more resources. And so, yes, we are now in a fundraising campaign to develop a 20,000 square feet space uptown Charlotte. Now, this is a huge undertaking for us. We're only 5. We have a staff of 5, 1 contractor, and a part-time person. So, we think big. We love big visions, but I think the bigger the vision, the bigger the impact as well. And so that's our next steps here in Charlotte, to be able to kind of create this ecosystem of support and build the next generation of entrepreneurs and innovators for Charlotte.
Man, this is fascinating, William. I'm also from Charlotte, and I grew up on the northeast side, particularly by the UNC Charlotte area. So it's great to hear a fellow Charlottean who's doing good work in the city in that regard. So let me say that, you've been doing this for the last 4 years, and you have experienced a measurable success in such a short amount of time. I imagine that, it has not been without challenges. So my question to you are what are the, 1 or 2 key insights for you as you think about your entrepreneurial journey over the last 4 years that could be instructive for new entrepreneurs who are trying to think about the ways in which they have social impact in their local communities?
Yeah, definitely some huge challenges and obstacles as a young organization. And, carrying a payroll is stressful. every second Friday, every two weeks, I'm thinking, okay, I've got 7 people that I'm responsible for at this point. A large 8,000 square foot space, and this brand reputation that we have to care about in Charlotte as well. And so, one of the things I think that we've done a good job of is nurturing our image and our brand reputation in the city. And so early on, I think it's important for you to understand why you exist as an organization and how you really start to build that brand in the community. People care about what impact you're making, but they also want to make sure that who you are, that you stand for something, and you are one of the ones who are just not talking, but you're actually doing. A lot of times folks will tell me that, early on when we were building Do Greater, we would talk about the challenges in the community and how we're going to solve them. And as we started to, implement the truck and the spaces, people will come up and say, "Hey, man, you guys are doing a great job. I've heard about you. I heard things that are happening." And literally it was only me, me on Instagram and Twitter and LinkedIn talking about what our vision was all about. And I believe that, investment follows this very concrete vision of what that preferred future is going to look like. So you're selling what that future is going to look like, and you're selling that impact, and you're talking about the challenges that are real in the community, and how you as an individual are the ones to do that. And so even as a nonprofit, we approach it as though we are an educational technology startup. We're not necessarily a nonprofit. We talk about things that are very impactful and how we're going to solve those challenges. And we talk about the way we're going to do it. Here's the problem, and here's the solution that we're trying to put forward. And we don't necessarily have all the answers. So we're going to iterate, we're going to test, and we're going to do it until we make a significant impact on these challenges. And I think people understand that. And so when we go in and we talk about these very significant challenges of the city, we have done some significant research around what those challenges are, and we take and craft our message around what really matters in the city. So it's not necessarily saying that, hey, I'm just a guy who cares about the West Side, which is true, but I'm a guy who cares about the West Side and these challenges in the community that are really important to the city of Charlotte. And so if I can walk in and say, here are 4 or 5 buckets, city of Charlotte, that you're concerned about, and this is how Do Greater is trying to solve those challenges, those things match up. And when those things match up, those resources start to flow as well. But those are things that just don't happen haphazardly. Those are things that are happening intentional, where we are saying, we understand what those challenges are, and we are putting forth these solutions to make those things happen. And so I think that's one of the biggest things that some businesses and nonprofits fail to do, is really identifying what that problem is, and convincing people that you are the one to solve it. There are tons of organizations out there for us, and that are in Charlotte, that are STEM-based organizations. And so when we came along as Do Greater, everybody said, well, are you just another STEM-based organization? Why don't you just partner with everybody else and be able to, all pull your resources together? And we said, no, that's not what we do. We are an organization that very specifically focuses on building creative confidence. And people will say, well, what is creative confidence? I don't know what that is. And we say, well, creative confidence is this whole idea for kids to understand that they have the capacity, if they increase their confidence, to solve very complex problems. And so what we start with is this whole, what are the problems in our communities, and how can we create spaces and community and activations to try and get our kids to solve those problems. And so it could be one, we would say, okay, one of our major problems in Uptown Charlotte right now is homelessness and vagrancy. So we would say, okay, how do we take 25 kids from the west side of Charlotte, bring them together with people like EY and Truist and these and Lowe's and these companies that are headquartered in our community, and bring those that personnel and those employees together to solve that complex problem. So when we're solving that problem, funding comes as well, because these are problems that those organizations want to solve as well. So we are tapping into those things, instead of just saying, hey, we just want to teach kids all about design thinking, or science or math. We're starting with the problem. And that differentiated us from other organizations, which in turn, I think we tapped into some dollars that were under, just not being tapped into. And so I think that was one of the things that I think for us allowed us to kind of grow fast and grow rapidly, because we were doing it a different way and approaching it from a different perspective.
So let me just ask a follow-up question, which is, you say that you're not a nonprofit, but you're an educational technology nonprofit. So my question to you, because we talk a lot about this in Do Good X, about for those who are interested in nonprofits, how you distinguish your customer, your constituents, and your donors. Who is your customer when you think about Do Greater?
Yeah, and when I say we're not a nonprofit, I mean, obviously we're a 501c3, we're structured just like everybody else, but our mindset is different. And so we are attacking the community as a organization that really is focused on solving a problem. So For instance, when we first started, we didn't traditionally go after any grant dollars. So you would think that an organization who were starting on their feet would look at, okay, what are the grants out there? Who's funding these things? Who can I get $5,000 from here, $10,000 from here? These large grant funders, Foundation for the Carolinas here, variety of different grant opportunities. No, what we did was we saw the need and developed a business plan around that need. And we developed a pitch deck just like you would develop as you were an educational technology company. So I come from Apple, Guy Kawasaki's, 10 slides pitch deck. And we, then all of a sudden, we're out pitching just like we were a young, looking for venture capital. And so most of our funders up front were individual investors. They were the folks who were high net worth individual investors that were investing in, high tech companies, venture led companies. But then at the same time, they had this model of kind of social impact. I need to give back. I need to, to be doing something that impacts the community. So that's where we came along and said, hey, we're just like the same organization that you just funded, but we're doing social impact work. And why don't you fund us? And here's the solution and the output and impact that we're going to make. And they saw that. So I would say, 70% of our initial investment up front was all individual investors. We didn't start getting corporate dollars and grants until later on into the system, as we were starting to actually build the physical space. So as we built the physical space,
No, I was going to say, I think that's a good point, right? Which is to say that, you did not shortcut your own business development process, even though you were going to pursue a legal structure as a nonprofit. You still had to think about how are we going to make money? How do we actually get people to invest in the thing that it is that we're trying to do in service to the community? So I think this is really important for social entrepreneurs and social impact entrepreneurs who are really trying to think about their impact and recognize that even if they decide to pursue a nonprofit structure, they still must go through the arduous task of thinking about product market fit, who is my customer, and how do I actually bring those people in to help me think about how we're going to generate revenue. So thank you. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. I mean, it's earned revenue model. Our earned revenue model was developed from day one. It is, how do we sustain ourselves if our grants run out? Can I make it to the next payroll or paycheck, or can I make the next payroll if, one of our largest funders pull out? And what does that look like? And so for us, it's continuing to do that, continuing to say, what is it? How do we sustain our organization? And then, obviously making sure that we are, talking with our customers, whether that is, we have we've got students who are customers who we're developing programs for, and then we've got our funders, and how do we support what they want to see us doing. But then I think what we sometimes miss is how do we bring those two things together? So, up front, when we were talking about building the space, in my mind, I'm a creative person. So in my mind, I had, here's what I want. This is what the space should look like. But what we did was we brought 25 kids in from the community and said, what do you want the space to look like? But not only that, when you bring the 25 kids in who are going to be utilizing our space, we paired them with our corporate sponsors and supporters. So EY and Venture for America and these organizations, our local graphic arts organization, we brought all those folks in as well and paired them with those 25 kids and said, over the weekend, we're going to develop what this space looks like. And we're going to listen, and we're going to have our architect and our designers and all of our corporate partners listening to what our kids are saying about what they need and what they want. And then we continue to build that space, and now continue to listen to our kids and try to create programs and interactions around, around what their needs are.
That's really incredible. I heard you say earlier that, part of the challenge, one challenge that you face is like payroll how you gonna pay payroll? That moment where you're kind of holding that, and that's a lot of weight to carry. And I just want to give kudos to you, because there's a recent study that I read a couple of days ago for the city of Atlanta, and I know it just focuses on Atlanta, but I'm sure it's very similar probably to Charlotte, that only 4% of businesses started by Black founders actually employ other people. So the fact that you employ 7 people and you have them on payroll is just a reflection of your success, but also your impact and providing spaces for other people to join in an effort that is really making a difference in the community in Charlotte. So kudos to you on that. And as it relates to nonprofits, you started to really share some tips and insights around the approach to really make it effective in thinking about not relying on a sole kind of foundation or funder, and really thinking about multiple streams of revenue, and also how you approach and really think about your customer or your audience in a particular way. And so I want to ask you, are there any other tips, or is there any advice that you would provide to folks who are thinking about starting a nonprofit, and as they navigate this space and really approach that, so that it really kind of creates a foundation for their success within that particular business model?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, if you nonprofit work is hard, really hard. I think a lot of times we see the number of nonprofits that are started in communities. I mean, we have hundreds of thousands. We've got thousands of nonprofits in Charlotte that are all particularly small and don't grow, the longevity is they're not sustainable. And I think if anybody who is wanting to start a nonprofit needs to think very seriously about if they want to do it, and secondly, I think it's always important to have passion for what you're trying to do. And so what I mean, it's not necessarily enough to just see a particular problem that you want to solve. You really need to have the passion around those things. I mean, it needs to be innate in you that this is what I am here to solve. I always say, we have passions for things that we love to do, but that might not necessarily be our purpose and what we're supposed to be doing. And so for me, I say, passion moves us forward, but purpose, is is that driving factor, and so, you really need to take a inventory of yourself to make sure that this is exactly what you want to do. For me, it was, I can look all the way back into my experiences on the west side of Charlotte and see very tangibly the way my family moved from where we were to where we are today with that access and exposure. So I saw personally inside of me what that can do. And so that drives me every single day, knowing that if I provide those same opportunities for kids in our communities, that they could possibly, use that opportunity and enhance and empower that potential to help them move forward. So that drives me every single day. And I think anybody who starts a nonprofit needs to have that same type of drive for the problem that they're trying to solve. Secondly, I think it's an abundance mentality. Okay, a lot of nonprofits think that, hey, there's this problem I want to solve, and everybody in the community needs to have the same, they need to care about it the same way I do. I need to fund it as well. So when I'm out, when they're out talking, it's this story around, it's this, what I call this woe is me story. It's like, hey, here, this is me. You need to help this because of this. I think it's more of a, this is a great place to invest your dollars. And here's what the outcome and the impact is going to be. It's not a woe is me. It's that this is important, and this is where the dollars should be going to make this great impact. And so it's this abundance mentality is that I should be here. I'm the one that can do this and make this happen, and not being afraid to ask for the dollars that needs to be appropriated to make that happen. So if it's $50,000, if it's $100,000, if it's $500,000, ask for it, and make sure you've got enough to make sure to make that impact. So for us, we're 5 people, and we have gone from asking for $50,000 to asking for $5 million, and we're not afraid to do that. We're saying that here's what needs to happen, and here's why it needs to happen. And it's going to take X amount of dollars to make that happen. And so we have to find, the resources to be able to do that. But you have to go into those resources and say, we are the ones you should put $1 million into to solve this challenge. So I would say that to nonprofits who are starting out there, do not be afraid to ask for that. We one of our core values at Do Greater is doubt the default. And really, we talk about this whole, we all fall back into, in default mode about what has been done before. So you look at organizations and you say, well, they've done these things. This is how I should do it. A small nonprofit should not be doing this, or we should not try to get an 8,000 square foot building, or we shouldn't try to get a 20,000 square foot building, or you're too small to be trying to activate uptown. Why? Why can't I do that? And so for us, it's going after these large, impactful projects that most people think we shouldn't do, but it's developing these ideas around why and how impactful it could be and what it can do for the city. And so I would say to any nonprofit that if you've got this big vision, go make it happen. Why not you? And the other thing we talk about as an organization is we talk about chasing your crazy, we call it. And so I've got tons of crazy ideas. Why not? Why not chase them? Who else is going to do it? So there, when we look at this building uptown, and it's we're building this 20,000 square foot entrepreneurial hub in uptown Charlotte. And there have been billion-dollar organizations who want to build an uptown entrepreneurial hub. And it hadn't happened. There are certain circumstances why they haven't happened. We don't know why they haven't happened, internal politics or whatever that might be. But for us, we see the need. And so we say, oh, well, nobody's done it. Why can't we do it? And we're chasing that crazy idea. And I think when you start to put that foot forward and you start to think about moving ideas into action, that's when people start to join that vision. They start to see it and they start to say, hey, you know what? You're right. Maybe we do need to do this. And so I think it's taking that first step. So any nonprofit out there that are looking to make that impact or solve some challenges, take that first step and make it happen. We get people who tell us all the time that they have watched us from day one when we said we wanted to do this. And then a year later, it was done. And now they're coming back and say, you know what? We didn't think you could actually do it. And because you did it, now we want to fund. We want to be involved. We see the needs and the opportunity. We'll walk right along with you.
Thank you for that. Why not you? So folks listening in, why not you? Thank you so much, William, again, for taking the time to chat with us today. Your story is powerful. The work you're doing is inspiring. And if you are listening in and you are in the Charlotte area, be sure to check out Do Greater or let others that you know in the area know about what Do Greater is up to. And also, if you want to learn about more resources that can help you on your entrepreneurial journey, feel free to go to dogoodx.org. And here you can check out our Do Good X LinkedIn community and tools, tips, and resources that we can provide to help you on your path. Thank you again, William. We appreciate you.
Thank you both for having me.
Yeah, thank you, William, for your work, your gift, and the powerful story that you are creating in Charlotte. So thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Do Good X podcast. To continue the conversation or access our resources, visit www.dogoodx.org. Join us again for conversations that will nourish your soul, ignite your dreams, and empower you to build an impactful business, one intentional step at a time. Until then, keep striving, thriving, and doing good.